In this video, we'll see how to set up and use the Sales Restrictions app, which allows you to control the items and quantities a customer is allowed to order. First, open the Sales Restrictions Setup page. Turn on the Verify Quantity on Release toggle to make sure you don't release sales documents when the sales line quantity is 0. Select whether you want to allow users to override the minimum dollar amount defined for a customer. If you select Error, then the user will not be allowed to release a sales order if the minimum order amount is not met. If you select Warning, the user can still release a sales order. I'll select Error. Select the number series used to number the sales restrictions. You can set up some items so they are never restricted. Go to the Items page and select an item. On the Prices and Sales Fast tab, turn on the Not Subject to Sales Restrictions toggle. If the item is already associated with the sales restriction, you can't turn on this toggle. And once this toggle is turned on, it can't be added to a sales restriction. Next, you need to set up the actual sales restriction. This is where you define the items a customer is permitted to order and in what quantities. Go to the Sales Restrictions page and select New. Enter a description of the code. Enter the items that customers can order. If I enter 1928-S, you can see that I can't add it because it's not subject to sales restrictions. I'll add eligible items and enter the minimum amount that must be ordered and the maximum amount that can be ordered. If there are no minimum or maximum requirements, you can leave the field blank. And lastly, set the status to active. Next, I'll set up the customers who will be using sales restrictions. Open a customer card. On the Invoicing Fast tab, I have the option of setting a total minimum dollar amount that a customer must order. If a customer does not meet the total minimum, users will either receive an error or a warning as defined on the Sales Restrictions Setup page. I'll set the minimum to $5,000. On the Shipping Fast tab, I'll select the sales restriction. You also have the option of setting the minimum order amount and restriction on the Ship To address. The Ship To address values will take precedence over the values on the customer card. I'm going to leave the values blank here. Now that a restriction code is assigned to this customer, they can only purchase items that are associated with the restriction code or that have the Not Subject to Sales Restrictions toggle turned on. If you have a lot of customers to add restrictions to, it will be time-consuming to update each record. Instead, you can perform a bulk update. Select Actions, Sales Restrictions, Add Sales Restrictions. Select the sales restriction you want to add to customers. You can enter a range of customers, such as 20,000 to 40,000, or you can leave the field blank to apply the restrictions to all customers. I'll leave the field blank and select OK. I'm asked to confirm that I want to add the restrictions to all customers. I'll select Yes. And now all of the customers have the sales restriction added. You can also remove restrictions from multiple customers using the same process, but with the Remove Sales Restrictions action. You have the ability to add an item to several restrictions at once. This is handy if you have new items. Go to Add, Remove Items. Choose the action. In this case, I want to add an item. You can also remove items from sales restrictions or update the minimum and maximum amounts for items already on a sales restriction. enter the item or item range, or add another filter such as item tracking, or leave the field blank to add all of the items. I only want to add 2 items to the item restriction, so I'll enter a range. Then select the sales restriction code or a range you want to add the items to, or leave the field blank to add the items to all restriction codes. I'll leave the field blank and select OK. I'm asked to confirm that I want to add the items to all of the sales restrictions. I'll select Yes. When I open the sales restriction, you can see the items were added along with the entered minimum and maximum quantities. You also have the option to add items to a sales restriction based on a customer range. Go to Actions, Sales Restrictions, Add or Remove Items. You can perform the same steps, but this time you can enter a customer or customer range. The final bulk update you can perform is to update the sales restriction status. Go to Update Sales Restriction Statuses. Enter the status you want to apply to the sales restriction codes. Enter a sales restriction or range, or leave blank to update all restrictions. And select OK. Statuses can also be updated based on a customer range. Choose Actions, Sales Restrictions, Update Statuses. Now that the sales restriction codes are active and associated with customers, we can see how they work. On this sales order, I'm going to show several messages users could see if they don't meet the restrictions. First, I'll add an item that isn't associated with the restriction code or that doesn't have the Not Subject to Sales Restrictions toggle turned on. You can see that I'm not allowed to enter a quantity for the item. Now I'll add an item that has a minimum of 4 and a maximum of 32. If I enter a value below 4, I'll receive an error. And if I enter a value above 32, I'll receive an error. I need to correct the quantity before I can proceed. Then I'll add an item that has Not Subject to Sales Restrictions turned on. I'm allowed to add the item, even though it's not associated with the customer's sales restriction. Now I can release the order. I receive an error that the total amount doesn't meet the customer's minimum order amount of $5,000. Because of how the app was set up, I cannot ignore the error. I need to update the amounts to meet the minimum. If the app was set up to only show a warning, I could choose to continue. I'll change the quantity to 32, and now that the total is above 5,000, I should be able to release the order. But I'm still receiving an error. That's because the app was set up to verify the quantity on release. And because this line doesn't have a value, it's causing an error. I'll delete the line, and now I can release the order. And now you know how to use the Sales Restrictions app.